Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Once a DJ. If you'd like to support the show, then head to onceadj.com/support to find out how you can help. If you'd like to get in touch with any feedback or suggestions, email onceadjpodcast@gmail.com. Once a DJ is produced by the good people at Remote Control. If you'd like to find out more about working with them, head to remote-ctrl.co.uk. Time for the show. So, Roger Bong, thanks a lot for coming on the show. And you're in Finland at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm here for a couple of weeks, and then I'm going to make my way to Japan after this. And finally back home to Hawaii.
Amazing. So what's brought you over here? Is it to do with the label and the shop and DJing?
A little bit, yeah. Actually, I played some sets, some very, very mellow, very casual DJ sets at the Odysseus Festival, which is run by We Jazz Records here in Helsinki.
Okay, so just to get into your story then, I'm really excited to learn about Hawaii really, because my only exposure to Hawaii is seeing a bit of footage in a Wu-Tang documentary where they're on a stage at the bottom of some mountains, which looks incredible, and Magnum PI. That's the limit of my knowledge. I'm embarrassingly naive.
Well, that's a great start. That's a great start.
So how does it differ to Magnum PI then? What was it like for you discovering music and kind of growing up there as a child?
You know, I think that Wu-Tang, that concert series at the bottom of the mountains was a little bit before my time. I was probably a little bit too young to attend some of those. I want to say, and I'm just off the top of my head, I want to say like Fishbone also performed there. And there's just these like super fun, crazy, epic concerts outdoors. Yeah, one of the most remote locations in the world, right? Hawaii. But you know, I was actually born in the Pacific Northwest, like the West Coast US. And then at a young age, my family moved to Hawaii. So we didn't have a connection to the islands prior to that. Like I don't have family or heritage living in the islands.
What took you over there? Was it a parent's work or something?
Yeah, my father got a job there. Later on in life, he told me he had applied to Honolulu and Rome, Italy. And it was like, Honolulu it is. So this could be a very different universe for me if he had taken the other job, I guess, or if he had gotten that one. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, like growing up here or growing up in Hawaii is like a very special experience with the people and of course the climate surrounding the environment, but also just kind of like the many cultures from all these different ethnic backgrounds, right? That come together. And then also, I mean, I kind of describe to people it's like probably one of the best places in the US. You know, it's the 50th state of the US, but it's probably one of the best places in the US because it has this like really genuine and special kind of mix of East and West in a way. Like you're not in America, but you are in America, and there's a lot to be said there. But yeah, it's like I actually can't see myself living in many other places in the US outside of Hawaii just because how special and like the energy and the aloha spirit, like that respect and love for people. And but music wise, like I don't know, I grew up skateboarding and you know a lot of great music, watching skate videos, and then got into record collecting in high school. My friends and I started making beats, but it wasn't until I moved away and went to university that I started to get really homesick, and then I started to like kind of miss the music from the islands. Can't say that I knew much about Hawaii's music at that time. It was just, you know, you grow up in a place and it's a very musical place. It's everywhere, right? You grew up there, you kind of just synthesize it. So yeah, it was really like my personal experience of being homesick when I was in college, and then I was had just graduated. It was about a year after, and I'd stumbled upon this DJ mix from Tokyo's DJ Muro, and he put out this amazing mix called Hawaiian Breaks, and it just like arrived into my life at a very perfect time because, like I said, I was very homesick, and then I heard this stuff, and I was like, I was still sampling. I wasn't DJing at that point, aside from radio, like college radio DJ, right? I heard this and I was like, wow, I need to know what this is, you know?
So just a couple of questions then.
Yeah.
So when you were growing up in skating, was the skating scene kind of similar where punk and hip hop were both quite big things for skaters to listen to in Hawaii?
Yeah, I would say so. But also like we listened to all kinds of everything.
And what was it like for, obviously we've discussed the Wu-Tang gigs, what was it like for access to mainland artists? Were you getting a lot of artists coming over on tours?
It's kind of like here and there. Like I remember one of my favorite concerts was seeing Sigur Rós, which is like an Icelandic band, right? And they came over and played the Hawaii Theater in like, I think it was like 2004 or something. And it was so special. It was like one of the best concerts I've ever been to. But I mean, for them to be all the way out there, that's quite a lot of effort, right? And it's just expensive for bands to get to Hawaii to begin with. So no, there's not a lot of access.
How long does it take to get from mainland?
From LA, it's maybe 5.5 or 6 hours.
Yeah, so it's a fair distance then.
Yeah, but I mean, like you can see some really great shows there, and nowadays there's some really nice. A couple of really great venues. We have a Blue Note as well. So I got to see Chick Corea play, like, and it turns out like he passed away a few months later.
Yeah.
But growing up, I mean, I lived in the center of Oahu, which is like the most populous island. And so if I had grown up in Honolulu proper, maybe my story would be a lot different, and my adolescent years would be more involved in the scene. But I used to go to some punk shows and whatnot, like Chinatown, Honolulu, and stuff. But the scenes are so small; they kind of like they mix really, really easily.
Do you find that you get a lot of kind of hybrid music over there then through that kind of cross pollination?
I think it's quite easy enough because you can go to a show and it's like, maybe it's a punk band, and then there's like a different band playing before them, and then another different style after that. But, you know, maybe this is just kind of the critic in me, but, you know, because Hawaii is so far removed from everything, and the population on the island, on Oahu, is like 1.5 million maybe. Or I'm sorry, 1 million. It's like 1.5 across the islands. So it's really small. And of course, the lifestyle, like it's gorgeous. It's really like there's 2 seasons, dry and then rains a little bit more than usual. Right, dry and wet, right? But so it can be very relaxed. And the point I'm getting at is that, like in other bigger cities, like in my travels, like I found that the energies in other cities are often like there's a lot. Everyone's trying to like do a little bit better, and everyone's kind of feeding off that energy. Kind of the bar keeps raising, right? Whereas this is my personal opinion, but sometimes in Hawaii, like no one's needing to raise the bar because there's really not that many people to begin with, and the competition's kind of low. I guess healthy competition, right? So sometimes there's just not sometimes the standard kind of sits at the same spot for a long time, if that makes any sense. But then to bring it back, like, so the music that I've been digging, which is like stuff from the 70s and early 80s, like musicians were, you know, they were some of the best acts of all time, you know, during that era. And so the musicians in Hawaii were all really good, and they're all trying to be better. It was just, you know, they were just building upon each other at that time. Yeah.
So where did you go to college?
I went to the University of Oregon, in Eugene, Oregon, and that's how I got into radio programming, or radio DJing, I guess you could say.
Was it all hip hop that you were DJing before that, or were you kind of varied?
Not at all. Like, you know, I only listened to so much hip hop, you know, growing up. Like, I listened to a lot of Doom and Madlib, and yeah, so what I was playing on my show was more jazz, I would say. Like, my show was on Sundays, and they had a pretty great like small record convention in Eugene, Oregon every year. And I remember going to the convention and like digging before my show and then coming back to my show. And I had found like 2 copies of Herbie Hancock's Headhunters, which it's just funny because I feel like nowadays it's more difficult to come across that record. We had found 2 and I was like, cool, I'm going to give one away on air, you know? And so I'd play a lot of jazz. Actually, I think that's right. I became the jazz genre music director. They had a director for each genre, right? And I had like applied for the position. And what you do is you just kind of maintain the library, get new music coming into the station and whatnot. But I applied to the position and didn't hear back from them. I was like, oh shoot, maybe somebody else got it. But it's a college radio station, very tiny. I went to the music director at some point later that week. I was like, hey, so, I submitted my application, didn't hear back. And the music director was like, oh yeah, nobody else applied except for you. So you got it. I was like, oh, cool. And I did, from there, I started reaching out to a bunch of labels and brought in a bunch of stuff.
Did they have like a vast archive for you to go at for the jazz stuff?
Not at all. No, they had some CDs and whatnot, but no vinyl. I mean, University of Oregon's radio station was like really small.
Right.
And so there wasn't even any room to store vinyl. So actually like the perk of the job, right, was I would reach out to labels and they would send stuff in, mostly CDs, but sometimes they would send vinyl. And I'd be like, well, I guess the station doesn't need this record, so I'll just keep it.
Was it when you were in Hawaii? I appreciate we're going kind of back and forth.
Yeah.
So when you were in Hawaii, was it a lot of jazz that you were digging?
Yeah, it was a lot of everything because I was at that time before I had moved to Oregon for school, I was digging for samples primarily.
Was it hip hop that you were making?
Yeah, hip hop beats. Yep.
What sort of things were you finding there was kind of decent access to? Because I find it depends where I go as to what sort of things I can get.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more of certain stuff you can get in London, for example. Like round where I live, there's loads of Northern Soul. If that's your thing, yeah, that's a big thing up here. But kind of modern soul. There's bits of rare groove, but say like modern soul and like boogie stuff there's a lot less, and a lot less of the good 70s soul.
Yeah, I would say there's some good soul. Disco, some jazz, but nothing that ever goes too deep or even like if you find some stuff, there's never like a lot of it.
Yeah.
Right. These gems. So kind of, I don't want to say basic, but I want to say like really, of course it's Hawaii. So really where the gems are, it's Hawaiian music. It's regional music, right?
So when you got over to the mainland, is it okay to refer to it as the mainland?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I don't want to say anything kind of disrespectful. So when you got over to the mainland and you got to kind of record fairs and things, was that pretty exciting to seeing like the difference in the things you could pull out?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like a dream for someone growing up in kind of like a suburb of Honolulu to be in a place where now there's just like so many of these things. So
were you doing more DJing out, or was it purely just radio?
I was purely doing radio DJing in college. And then it was when I moved back to Honolulu after graduating. I was introduced to my now good friend, Oliver Seguin, who now works full-time at my record shop, right? But we met when I moved back, and he had heard somehow about Aloha Got Soul, the blog, right? And then we became really good friends, and at some point, he's been a DJ for a long time. At some point, he and his friend were like, oh, we should organize a party. Roger, do you want to, be the opening DJ? And I was like, sure. I don't really, really know what that means in this context of like we played that like it was like a little pub, right? But I was like, sure. And I remember that gig was so funny because like, I think there was a mic, but I was, instead of DJing as if it were a kind of gig, I was like DJing more like a radio style. It worked fine, but looking back, I was like, it's really funny to think that was kind of my only reference point.
Yeah, I've not really got into the conversation with anyone about the mic skills that you pick up, because I've just put an episode live today with Rob Percy, on our chat, he was really, really comfortable talking away. And the more that I've listened to his show on Soho Radio, the more it all makes sense to me. He's honed that microphone sort of skill over time.
Yeah.
So did you find that the talking kind of came pretty naturally because of all the radio work then?
Yes, and it still does, I would say. Although I don't really talk during my sets anymore. But I'm still doing radio quite regularly now. Yeah.
So just going back then to, again, so you mentioned about Muro's Hawaiian Breaks mix, which is, for anyone listening, is an incredible mix, as are basically everything that Muro does. He's just one of the best. So from that point, was it a conscious decision to start the blog then? And did you just start going in, or did you just kind of casually pick away at it?
Yeah, it was very intentional. Actually, the first blog post was I think I had uncovered, with the help of some other people, I had uncovered most, if not all, of the tracks on that Hawaiian Breaks mix. And that was the first blog post. And that was the reason why I put the blog up.
Yeah, and it's not easy to find the full track list for a Muro mix. I remember I was obsessed with trying to get the track list for Taste of White Chocolate.
Okay, yeah.
Because there's a couple of amazing songs on there, and I still don't think I ever found it.
Yeah, well, it was. I think I was relying on soulstrut.com, which is like a Crate Diggers forum at the time, and I forget what else. But it's funny. I met somebody who was from Hawaii but living in San Francisco at the time, and then I also met someone else who was living in Seattle, I want to say. And then a digger from France who was like into some of the tracks. So like, between 3 or 4 people, that's how the track list came to the surface, came to light.
Yeah, I mean, Soulstrut's got some incredible knowledge on it. Some real heavy hitters on there.
Yeah.
So I remember that's probably where I first came across the blog as well, because I've probably still got it bookmarked somewhere. There was a post with the Vic Malo.
Yes.
Vic Malo.
Malo.
That I think it's 7-inch, and it's just amazing.
Ah, yeah.
And that was kind of my hooking, because I think from what I heard of the Hawaiian stuff, it's like everything. There's just so much music to get at, particularly since the blog era. I was just obsessed with what next. But what I found with the kind of Hawaiian stuff that I was listening to on the blog, it's just that sunshine and that laid back sort of nature just comes through all the music. It's the same with a lot of like the West Coast AOR stuff as well. And it's so, it just really gets you.
Yeah, it feels good. And like, it hits a spot for sure.
Did it really kind of satisfy that need for connection back to Hawaii then whilst you were at college? Did you get enough out of it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was like, in some ways, it was my ticket home, too, because when I moved back home, which was in 2011, I had something to do, I had a reason to be back, because by the time I moved back in 2011, like my family had left and moved back to the mainland.
When did you start the blog? Was that about 2008?
Let's see, 2010. So I was still living in Oregon when I started it, and I was like, I had uncovered the track list, and then that's when I started looking on like eBay, had some stuff, and just trying to find these records however I could while still living in the mainland. And it was interesting, like the blog, like just trying to be as detailed as I could when I found these records, putting as many of the liner notes up, like who played on what. That's when some of the artists or musicians on these records like started reaching out, because they would Google their name and find this blog. At the time too, there was only, I want to say, like Japanese selectors who were blogging about these funky records from Hawaii. So everything was in Japanese. So I had just graduated from journalism school, and one of the things that I left with was like, I should start it would be, smart of me to start a personal project where I can continue writing and build a portfolio while I start to pursue this career in journalism.
At what point did the blog start to kind of blow up? At what point were you like, I'm really onto something here. Was it before or after you moved back to Hawaii?
I want to say it was probably after I moved back. But interestingly enough, it was there was early interest in the blog from all parts of the world, including London. Music writer named Anton Spice reached out and had me do a mix, and he wrote an article for this now defunct online music magazine. But we've kept in touch. I actually met him for the first time in person last year. But yeah, it was all this international interest, and that kind of goes without saying, because these record collectors and the crate digging culture is very much international. And now it's been a label for 8 years. It's been a record store for 2 years. It's been a blog for 13. It's all been a very gradual process, and there's been these micro blow-ups, so to speak. In 2016, 1 year after running the label, I was put in touch with Strut Records, and I did a compilation for Strut Records under the same name, Aloha Got Soul. And that's really kind of what catapulted my work around the world.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying Once a DJ. I wanted to create a product for the listeners to be able to support the show, and for the guests as a token of gratitude for being on. So I've teamed up with Sure Shot Shop to create some Once a DJ 45 RPM adapter clamps. These are my weapon of choice as a 45 adapter, as they add stability and grip to aid you in any setup. These are available for £25 each plus flat fee postage from onceadj.bigcartel.com. And if you'd like to see the other models you can buy and also customise, check out sureshotshop.com. If you're an avid collector of timeless music on vinyl but don't have the budget to fork out for those pricey originals, then look no further than Be With Records. From library music to yacht rock, jazz, hip-hop, disco and beyond, Be With lovingly reissue some of the coolest classics. All of their records are carefully remastered and cut to the highest standards to make sure the pressings are of peak audio quality and do justice to the music being released. And something else to note is that they don't do limited runs to drive up resale and hype. If the demand is there, they'll repress, as the focus is the music, not the profit margin. They have flat rate shipping and free UK shipping on orders over £60. And if you head to bewithrecords.com and use the discount code ONCEADJ, all one word, you'll get 10% off your order. So head to bewithrecords.com and level up those crates today. So when you were just doing the blog, because we'll come to the label as well shortly, when you were first just doing the blog then, did you have a full-time job as well?
Yeah, I was still working full-time up until 2017. I had a few different jobs in like marketing and PR and video production and whatnot. Yeah. But it's, I mentioned earlier, like starting the blog while I was away and then moving back was great because it gave me this like purpose, a reason to be back home. I'd actually had a job interview set up for when I set it up before I moved home. And then when I moved home, it was with a Japanese company. And when I moved home 3 days later, that 2011 earthquake struck and a huge tsunami hit the Tohoku earthquake, right? Needless to say, the company had set up an interview with me. I wasn't able to not even hire me, but they just canceled the interview. I guess it was a blessing in disguise because I really started to focus on the blog at that point. Like, okay, this is it for me.
I know firsthand when you take on something that's effectively, it's a passion project, but with a wider aim, which is what this podcast is really.
Yeah.
I'm fully aware of how it can really take over the amount of time that you can end up pouring into it. And it's quite hard to pull back. How did you find that? Have you been able to balance things easily, or is there times where it's just people have had to be like, you don't have to work so hard?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And kudos to you for, running this project, personal project. I burnt out super hard last year. It was finally the culmination of, going just nonstop for 10 plus years straight. Yeah, but in terms of like holding a full-time job and running my personal project, I quit at the end of 2017. That was almost 3 years after I'd started the label, right? But for me, I really try to do a good job in everything I do. And I guess what I've distilled it to is I want to give 100% to whatever I'm doing. What I realized was I was giving 100% to both my full-time job and my personal project, but it had reached a point where it was just too much work for either of those. And so I was reaching this point where I could no longer give 100% to both. Both were going to begin to suffer. So I had to remove one from the equation in order to continue to give my best to one of them. And I knew it was going to be my thing,
Was there any, did it feel like a risk?
Yeah, totally felt like a risk, but I felt comfortable taking that risk because I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into it, I'm sure, but I just felt like it really needed to happen. I had no idea how it was going to happen, how it was going to work out, because I like running a label is a lot of work, and you have to be consistent, and that's something I'm still working on, right? But I also knew that I couldn't keep I was fortunate enough to work for a great company, and they would let me ship records to the office. So I'd be working, and then I'd have a box of 545 show up, and they'd be like, "Oh, yeah, don't worry, I'm going to throw them in my car at the end of the shift." Yeah.
So a couple of questions from that then. The first one is, with that burnout, did you know at the time leading up to it just how stressed you were, or was it only at that kind of peak critical point where you kind of looked back almost after the smoke had cleared and just realized how stressed you had been?
I knew for a couple of years leading up to my burnout that it was coming, and I was doing a lot to kind of manage or mitigate the stress levels, but maybe more so the work load.
Yeah.
Right. Because running a label, this is before the shop. Before the shop opened. But running a label, there's a lot of royalties and accounting that go into this, right? So that's a lot to manage on its own. And then building the brand and whatnot. So I the 2020 pandemic lockdown, having to stay home for 6 months, or I forget how long at this point, but having to stay home for an extended period of time, really allowed me to kind of start from scratch and start to really look at what structures needed to be put in place for my hobby turned small business, and what I can do with this time to start to manage all the workload, the things that need to get done. But I'm looking back and why am I spending my time doing this that way when I can set something up to allow me to just click a button kind of thing. Yeah. So yeah, but then we opened the store in 2021, and it just started. Yeah, it started to happen. Yeah, things started to fall. It started to crumble, I guess. But I knew it was coming. Yeah.
It's a lot to take on when you're already maxed out.
Yeah.
But this is so interesting, I think, and it's kind of, we've gone down a bit of a different route on a lot of the episodes.
Yeah. Well, I'll just drop this in there real quick, because in 2020, I had a lot of time to think about what it is I'm doing. I quit my job at the end of 2017. Okay, I'm going to run this label. I'm going to DJ. And the DJ gigs will help to pay for my expenses, living expenses, while I continue to build the label, which is so much work. But you don't get much return, right? But I can see these opportunities and things like sync licensing and sampling that could potentially build into something bigger, right? And then, pandemic hit, and had to reevaluate a lot of things, or just evaluate a lot of things. And one of those things I kind of decided for myself was I'm not really interested in DJing anymore. It's never really been my thing. Not the reason why I started this. I don't know that I need to keep doing it so much, or I need to pursue it, because from the time I quit my job, I was trying to take whatever kind of gigs came my way, like bar gigs, or maybe the odd wedding or something. But it's a hustle. It's such a hustle. And in the kind of music that I prefer to play, or at the time I preferred to play, didn't always translate into what venues were looking for. I feel like I'm more of a from a selector standpoint than a party DJ kind of standpoint, right? And also my sets are, I try to make them kind of like educational, so to speak. Like especially when I'm traveling, I try to only play music from Hawaii. And people are like, oh, that's really good. I'm like, yeah, it's all music from Hawaii, the Hawaiian Islands. Wait, what? Really? Okay. So they like, for someone like you, Adam, or anybody really listening to it, it kind of, my sets and everything else that I put out there into the world are these like entry points into the music from Hawaii, and who knows where that's going to lead people.
Yeah, I mean, I listened to is it Analog Gold? The one you did in the really nicely laid out place with the plants and...
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Analog Journal.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I listened to the My Analog Journal one the other day, and that's absolutely great. Recent set of yours. I urge people to check it out on YouTube.
Oh, thank you.
So just going back to the label then, what was the thing that spawned the label? Did you start it for the artists, or did you start it for the audience? What was the thing that made you think I should do this? And was it a lot, like, how did you handle, you've mentioned royalties, like the contractual side of things, because that is a beast.
Yeah. I think, but I think I started it for the artist, yes. For the audience, yes, because the blog had grown to a point where people were hitting me up all the time, like, hey, can you find me a copy of this record? I'm like, no, that's stupid rare. Like, I'm still looking for a copy of that sort of thing. And then for Hawaii, on a, much bigger picture, and then on a, very individual level, also for myself. Right. So I'll explain that real quickly. For the artists, I'm just up until this point, we've mostly worked with artists who kind of like self-released or their music or own the rights themselves. So the contracts and stuff has been quite simple and easy. It's just what's really difficult is building the relationships with people and earning their trust, right? So do it for the artists also because I think their music deserves to be heard. I think a lot of people can agree. But being from a place like Hawaii, you're just kind of so far removed sometimes from most of the world that it kind of feels out of reach to be able to get your music into, a place like London or Japan or, anywhere really, Brazil. So there's that. For the audience, yeah, like I said, so many people had kept asking me, and I'm like, you know what? I think I know the solution. It's just reissue it. Make more copies. And then on a bigger scale for Hawaii, it's like, there's so many reissue labels out there. And, Aloha Got Soul is not purely a reissue label. We also work with new artists. But I knew, and I still know, that anyone from anywhere could potentially they could reissue music from Hawaii, which, in all fairness, that's perfectly fine. But if it's coming out of a place like the UK or Japan or anywhere, like that context, that line back to the origin point has been kind of like severed in a way, and it's now being told from somewhere else. So I also wanted to start the label because I felt like it would be important for at least a reissue label, if not more, to come from the place where the music's being made.
Yeah, it's coming from the heart, isn't it? It's not just about making the money and connecting the dots. It's about the soul of where it's from.
Yeah, and to speak to the kind of like crate digging culture, it's not like another badge on my, like, oh, I found this record, I reissued it on my label before anybody else. It's like, it's not, for me, it's about the music and the artists. But that's a very real thing,
It must be really nice when you re-release something and it gets really good feedback, and then just to be able to give that back to the artist, and it must be really cool for them to know that there's new life being brought into their music.
Absolutely. I mean, Mike Lundy was his album, The Rhythm of Life. That was the first one we released on our label, and I remember when I gave him the first royalty check from the release, I think he said to me like, wow. He opened it, he's like, wait, what? Really? It did pretty well considering. It's just, but he said, I think this is the first time I'm ever getting a royalty check for my record, which he made in like 79,
Wow.
Yeah, so it's difficult to maintain close relationships with every artist on the label, but the ones that I do have like more regular contact with, yeah, everyone's just like really supportive of what the label has become and what it's doing.
That's amazing. And so, what was then the impetus for the physical location? Was it to have somewhere primarily to operate from for the label, or was it that you wanted a shop as another business as well?
In 2020, I evaluated a lot of things, and at that point, the majority of kind of the audience for Aloha Got Soul was still kind of like more international or outside of Hawaii, right? So I was still like packing and shipping a lot of orders to customers around the world. But I was like, I had all the inventory in my apartment, and then at some point it became too much. So I moved it to a storage unit. I feel like this is a very classic story. But at some point in, just how 2020 went for most people, including me, like I just knew by the end of that year, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to go to the storage unit and pack orders. Like, this is kind of depressing. I would love to have a space for myself, like an office, if anything. So I started looking at the beginning of 2021 for that and found a space that was big enough to be both an office and a retail store. And I was like, I want to say I've been kind of off and on for years about whether or not I want a shop, like a record shop. And I think around that time I was kind of like, or leading up to that time, I'd kind of been like against the idea because I just didn't want to add that on to the ever-growing list of things that are, contributing to my impending burnout. But when I saw the space, I knew it would be great to have a shop as well, because Honolulu at that time only had 2 record stores, right? And then there's one more on a different island, but that's it. And so just there was this opportunity to contribute to the local music community in a very real and substantial way, and we felt that it was with the record store. And also just traveling, like I remember Light in the Attic had a great record store kind of adjacent to their warehouse. They don't have that anymore, but I loved that spot. It was this tiny little shop, and when you wanted to check out, you just like, they had a window into their warehouse, and you would ring the bell and somebody would come up and ring you up. But yeah, all these like small kind of boutique record stores that were outside of your typical traditional record store experience, like let's say Amoeba Music, right? It was a great example. I knew I didn't want to do that, and the space was just big enough to have the office and like a small boutique shop.
And then when I was reading earlier, was I right in reading that you opened the shop during lockdown?
Not during lockdown, but it was spring of 2021 or June 2021. So there were still quite a lot of restrictions in place, right?
So how was adoption to the shop then? Did you get enough people coming in quite quickly, or was it a slow burner?
People embraced it really quickly. The most difficult thing was it was just me and my partner at the time who were working the shop. So between us, and I was still running the label and doing other things, right? So between us, we were only able to keep it open for like 3 or 4 days a week at the most. So the hours were really weird. So that was kind of like that contributed to a semi-slow start. But now we're open 7 days a week, and it's amazing. Yeah, people love coming to the shop. It is a bit out of the way. No, I'm sorry, it's not out of the way, but there's no parking for a shop, which in the US, like, people love parking, unless you're in a place like New York City, right? So I like to say that our shop is destination retail. So it does take quite a lot of effort for people to get there. But we throw parties on Sundays where it's really easy to get to the shop. And yeah, I'm really, really like, just grateful, and I don't know if surprised is the right word, but just really grateful with how the community has embraced this shop. And even if they're not into records, people are still coming through and enjoying the space.
Yeah. Is the shop just for the label's records, or do you have other stock as well?
We have lots of other stock. I feel like we only have one bin for our releases, and we have quite a lot of bins for like Hawaiian and local music. And then we carry used records, of course. Collections walk in quite often now. And then for new vinyl, we like to stock like independent music from around the world. And a lot of the selections are informed from our tastes as like DJs and radio curators, essentially.
Because I was thinking with that, if it was a shop where it was boutique and the shop was just for the label, that's one thing, setting up a shop like that. But then with the added responsibilities when you've got to be managing, buying in, going through collections, valuing them, pricing them up, there's a lot of work involved.
It's a lot of work, yeah. But some of the tools that I found for the labels business, some of the tools that I found in 2020 for the labels business have allowed me to create systems and structures for the shop that make stuff like that a lot more manageable and easy for somebody to do. So it seems like a lot of work, but actually we get by. And plus, I mean, this is the beauty of small record stores. We don't even need that much inventory. So yeah, records slip through the cracks. Maybe we price them wrong. Maybe there's the wrong record inside, or it's the condition's not as good as it could be. But it's a low number of stuff that happens. Yeah, but I'll say that, like, for the shop now, we're doing about 2, soon to be 3 events each month in the store. We have DJs. We have our friends do a coffee espresso pop-up. We're going to start doing live music in the store. And the point I want to make there is that we recognize the need, at least in Honolulu, for alternative spaces and, just simply put, more venues. So we are really trying to push the store as being a venue for people, for musicians and artists in Honolulu, as well as visiting artists as well.
I think certainly in the city I live in, so I live in a small city in the middle of England, and I think certainly there's a need for spaces to be successful and have some sort of longevity now. There is this real call for them to be multi-purpose as well. So I was somewhere in London the other day that was like a smoothie and coffee place as well as a record shop. It's quite a small collection of records, but really well curated. And it just, if you get it right, it can be really successful and a real good addition to the community.
Absolutely. And I think there are so many things that informed the opening of the shop and how we operate. But I honestly think, looking back now, like, one of the things that kind of informed why we do what we do at the store is that kind of realization for me in 2020, where I was like, I don't know that I want to DJ anymore, because I was finding that what I want to do as a DJ, as a selector, there's not a lot of places in Honolulu for that. Be like, okay, you should, come play at this hotel every Sunday or something, or once a month. Then I do it, and have a decent response in the beginning, but eventually, the hotel, restaurant, like, they gotta make money. They gotta sell alcohol. Like, what's the common denominator for that? It's like pool party DJ, kind of like, you know what I mean? Like, which I'd be happy to try and do, but that's not what I've been, building upon for the past 10 years. And so now we have the space where we can support DJs from all walks of life, and we can tell them, like, you can play whatever you want. There's no pressure here. We're actually here to just support you. And we've seen this, and we feel like the customers and the community members who come and hang out in the store when we do these events, especially, we've been doing the in-store DJ events more than any other event so far. But when people come and they're like, really, they're there to listen, which is really special. And that's not the case for a lot of venues.
Yeah, and I don't know if you find something, because I've kind of stepped away from DJing and stepped back to it. and got a different relationship with it now, which kind of comes full circle into why I started the podcast and what my approach is. I find that my energy level and my music selection and my mood are all very congruent. So I find it hard to, if I'm kind of tired out, I find it really hard to bring the sort of energy that you need for sort of party DJing. So I don't know if that's like a similar thing that you find where it's like, I don't feel like this isn't me.
Yeah, I think what I've found for myself is like doing like a B2B set with someone is really the best way to kind of inspire me if it's that kind of setting. Oh, you got, oh my God, you just played that track. Okay, let me see what I got to match that and like keep the party going. Yeah, but it's, I say all that, but actually in the past, I think maybe partly like having the store now, and I have 3 employees now actually, but 2 of them are together. We're all buyers, and so every week we have a lot of fun, like buying new vinyl, bringing it into the shop. But this like energy of always being around music, a lot of new music now. That's not just like stuff from Hawaii, right? What am I trying to say here? Like, I think I'm actually finding that I'm returning now to wanting to DJ more, and actually I'm curious now more than ever. Like, what is it like to play more parties? Because I've never really been a party DJ, but like, how am I gonna take what I do and translate it into those kind of spaces, right? So I played this like one of my favorite tracks as of late, and I only kind of discovered, like, just made this discovery for myself one day in the shop. We were just kind of hanging out and messing around. I was playing some records, and I was like, oh, I think this would go really well into that. And the track I'm mentioning here is the Call Upon is Freedom. It's from their second album. We reissued it, but it's like this really like fun, high energy kind of jazz funk track, and it's a bit all over the place, but it actually goes really well with like a house track, or it can be. So yeah, I'm like, I have a lot of fun now trying to figure out like, how do I, more so than ever, instead of doing these kind of like my analog journal type of curated sets, which I love to do, that's like storytelling in a way for me, but I'm trying to figure out now, okay, well, how do I like play more of this kind of party settings where it's like house and disco, and throw in every now and then something like Call Upon Us Freedom or what. So
yeah, but I think part of it's the way that house music's gone and the scenes have shifted. Like, you seem to be able to play a lot more Brit funk when you put it in amongst house and disco and things like that. There's
more space kind of in the Spurs. Yeah, I feel that
it all just sits, because I've played sort of Friday night gigs and been able to play, like Herbie Hancock and some of the more Brit funk stuff as well. Cool. And like Idris Muhammad and stuff like that.
Yes. Yeah,
and it just kind of works.
It's fun to mix it up like that and kind of like add that flavor, but one of the directions we talk about a lot, one of the directions for the label that we talk about a lot, is putting out more like remixes and more tracks for the dance floor, new music as well. And we've done a few things here and there on the label, but nothing, there's not a substantial catalog yet from Aloha Got Soul where we feel like as DJs, as vinyl DJs, we could play a longer set confidently in that kind of setting with our records, our releases. So,
hey guys, I hope you're enjoying Want to DJ. I wanted to create a product for the listeners to be able to support the show, and for the guests as a token of gratitude for being on. So I've teamed up with Sure Shot Shop to create some Want to DJ 45 RPM adapter clamps. These are my weapon of choice as a 45 adapter, as they add stability and grip to aid you in any setup. These are available for £25 each plus flat fee postage from wantodj.bigcartel.com. And if you'd like to see the other models you can buy and also customise, check out sureshotshop.com. If you're an avid collector of timeless music on vinyl but don't have the budget to fork out for those pricey originals, then look no further than Be With Records. From library music to yacht rock, jazz, hip-hop, disco and beyond,
be with lovingly reissue some of the coolest classics. All of their records are carefully remastered and cut to the highest standards to make sure the pressings are of peak audio quality and do justice to the music being released. And something else to note is that they don't do limited runs to drive up resale and hype. If the demand is there, they'll repress, as the focus is the music, not the profit margin. They have flat rate shipping and free UK shipping on orders over £60. And if you head to bewithrecords.com and use the discount code ONCEADJ, all one word, you'll get 10% off your order. So head to bewithrecords.com and level up those crates today.
Yeah. Do you have access to the multi-tracks for a lot of the releases?
No, actually very few. But I think at that point, at this time, it's kind of a moot point, right? Because there's so many different software like programs available, or you can just kind of pull the stems where you need them.
Yeah, you can do a lot with it. It's still not, from my experience, it's still not as good as the multi-track. Like, it's impressive, but it's not quite the same as just having everything tracked out. But I was just wondering about that because it means your remixing is approached differently, doesn't it? So it's going to be a lot more kind of sampling rather than like full remixes.
Yeah.
But another point on the store, then you've mentioned about having, and this comes back to the business and the burnout and all that side of things, is what was your experience about getting your first employees and just relinquishing control? Because I think when you run your own business, that is quite a big deal for a lot of people. How do I get someone in? And it's even with people you trust, there's still, or it can be a big leap of faith to get someone doing something, even though they might end up doing it better than you.
So my first employee was my friend who I mentioned earlier, Oliver, who I met when I just moved back to Hawaii after college. And we've been friends for, since before I was DJing, I guess. But what am I trying to say here? And Oliver and I have been DJing together for a long time. So we have that kind of working relationship, if you will. But when I opened the store, I knew there was going to be some kind of chance for him to work there as well. And in fact, we even had a meeting or two prior to opening the space where I was trying to like gauge how he might be able to contribute, but he has a family and he needs to work a regular job. It's very difficult for him to do like side projects, passion projects kind of thing. So that was that. We opened it in June 2021. I hired him in February of 2022. Right. And let's see, I'm just trying to like put all, because there's a lot of thoughts bouncing around. But yeah, so I knew at the beginning of 2022 that, okay, need to hire somebody. My partner at the time, she was working a certain number of shifts, but had expressed that she no longer wanted to be working at the shop, because retail life it's a lot, providing that customer service. So, okay, it's time to start looking for somebody. Oliver would be a great candidate, but he's a really good friend. I don't want to like hire him and then jeopardize our friendship, right? I don't know what he's like in that kind of work context outside of DJing. So what I did was, let's see, we had a lot of conversations about that, first and foremost, but I also, several months before, had started like keeping a log and building out keeping a log of every task I was doing for the shop and what it took. And I started building out this kind of like handbook, right, that explained pretty much everything that I was doing, as well as also kind of explaining all the intentions and the thoughts that have gone into the shop and what makes it the shop and the ethos and the mission, right? So I had all of this kind of laid out I'm using Notion, which I'm sure most people are familiar with at this point, but using Notion. And yeah, so I just put in a lot of effort up front before I hired him to make sure that the training part and bringing him on board was as smooth as possible. And so far it's been as smooth as possible. And then I'll also say on top of that, like, this is really, I have been like managing 2 employees now for almost, or maybe more than a year now. And it's very much a learning process for me. For so long, Aloha Got Soul has been like, I've been the face. So much has been, it's almost been a one man show, pretty much. What am I trying to say here? Let me dial that back. Actually, I've been managing, like, Oliver and my other employee Max for about a year, and I've learned so much about what it takes to, work with your employees. And so I think one other really critical part is like understanding, but also like talking about their kind of like their weaknesses, right? What are they not good at? What do they find really challenging? And how does that like play into the business, because like, Oliver, like I told you earlier, like I set up a bunch of systems for things like inventory. Well, Oliver, that's not his, strong point. So when it came to doing inventory, it was difficult. And we found out by talking about it later on that, he doesn't need to do it. Like, there are other really important points in the business that he can focus on, and we can find other ways to take care of the inventory. Yeah. So it's really like, just, as a small business owner, I can imagine that it'd be really easy to just get kind of like tunnel vision, just get stuck in things and just expect, okay, I'm going to hire you, so you got to figure out how to do it, right? But no, really, there's a lot of emotional kind of like, there's a lot of communication happening.
Yeah, but my day job is effectively an audio video production agency, and I plug into other agencies just to kind of, they'll do the creative, and we're just a plug-in. We work in a number of different ways. But yeah, I'm the same. Like, I'm very much the front of it, and I would say, quite a unique way of communicating with my clients and the freelancers that I work with. And I think these relationships are like so important. And I think that's the scary thing, just because it's not just about whether someone can do that skill. It's about, as soon as you hand off the relationship to other people, I think that's a really kind of scary side of it as well.
Yeah, and I can agree to that, and I feel like that's kind of the beauty again of like the small record stores, that it's quite low pressure. All we got to do is sell records and some shirts, at the base level.
I suppose it's more relevant to the label, really, if you were ever to pass any of that on. Say if you were ever to get someone else to be like dealing with the artists.
Yeah, that's a good, and okay, so then to go towards that direction a little bit, like, ever since opening the shop in 2021, that's primarily been my focus. We're open 7 days a week. It's the source of stability for what we do now. Whereas prior to that, the label, to have a successful label that, supports you and or a staff, like, it's got to be really consistent, I imagine. I don't know yet. I'm still working on that. But with burnout and just the shop opening and just so many things happening, I actually made a pretty conscious effort to kind of put a lot of label stuff on pause. If you look at our schedule, like 2020, 2021, we put out quite a lot of records. That's because we had a lot of time to work on. I had a lot of time to work on that stuff. But with the shop and everything else, I realized I don't really have the capacity to do all of these releases that are in the pipeline. And I want to say for 2022, even 2023, we had like 10 LPs last year lined up. We only put out like 3 records last year. Well, I want to say 2 of them were Call Upon records. So the label's actually like taking a bit of a backseat, so to speak, so that I can focus more on not only the shop, but also myself. And just make sure that like the wheels are turning, the cogs are oiled, like The staff is happy. I'm happy. At this point, Aloha Got Soul has been around as a label for 8 years. And so, having conversations with some of my close friends, like, I'm kind of like, I think I need to kind of put the label a bit on pause. I can't handle it right now. And everyone's sentiment has been like, no worries. Like, when you want to come back with more releases, like, cool. Like, people appreciate it. They'll be waiting, of course, but they're not going to be mad if you're not putting out 10 records a year,
Yeah, I think people understand, don't they? It's such a lot to do, and to do it well.
Yeah, and I actually had this thought earlier today, because there's so much music from Hawaii, right? There's so much music that we've covered on the blog and our mixes and whatnot. And there's only so much time and energy that we can devote to reissuing all of these records that we love, so it's like, I'm actually realizing, like, there may be a finite number of releases we put out on the label, and that's okay. Like, finite meaning, for every one Mike Lundy, there might be 10 other artists that we're really, really love to put out, but just put out Mike Lundy's record and let people try and dig up the rest on their own if they really want to,
Yeah, I think sometimes you can feel, and I don't know if you found this with the blog, once you start doing something and putting this content out there, you can kind of feel this obligation to people, but then you step back, like I was doing this weekly, and then a couple of people were like, just put one out every couple of weeks, because I was talking about having a month off, and because I just got too excited by it, the people I was speaking to, and you're always trying to build these relationships and stuff, and it's got a real buzz to it. And you're like, oh, I can't believe I've spoken to them. And yeah, people are like, just put out less. It's fine. And then you start to think, well, I'm not earning any money out of it. It's not, no one's going to die if I don't put one out next week. But in your head, it's easy to build up this obligation and this pressure. Or maybe that's just me. I don't know.
No, yeah, very much. I feel that, and maybe on my end, that pressure stemmed from, when I quit my job. I had, like, from end of 2017 to 2021, we opened the record store. I was trying to figure out, how the hell do I make this work? I need to put out more releases. It needs to be consistent. I got to make money off of these releases. Otherwise, I got to go back to working a regular job and whatnot. So I think that's where it stems from. But the store was a blessing in that sense. Like, it's provided that kind of, it's the foundation, it's the bedrock of what we do now. And now we can I can dial things back in other areas of what AGS has done and really kind of, again, evaluate where our energies are best spent now. Now it's throwing in-store events so we can build the local community.
I think that's such an important thing as well after COVID and lockdown. I don't know if you find it, but certainly around here, I don't feel like local community is what it used to be.
Yeah.
Particularly because we all got tied into connecting digitally and at a distance. So anything you can do on that is going to have such a payoff for you.
Absolutely. And then even, in places like Hawaii too, it's so tempting for remote workers to move there and call that home. But, earn a salary that's New York or Bay Area, San Francisco level, right? Which is not true for locals in Hawaii. It's like, that's not the same. But so there's that, kind of change in the fabric as well. So having this space where people can not only come together, but also celebrate local music, that's a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, I think that thing with the remote workers as well, that's potentially a bit dangerous to the sort of local economy, isn't it? If it pushes up your rent prices because you're getting a lot of tech workers like in San Francisco, it could cause problems.
But Hawaii also has a strong military presence, and like if you're in the military, you can afford housing more easily or more readily than their typical local resident, compared similar to like tech workers as well. But I think it's something we can't avoid, unfortunately. But yeah, Hawaii is such a welcoming place. The people embrace pretty much anyone who comes through, as long as there's like a mutual understanding and respect. And so with that being said, like, you know, as long as we can share that love and respect and aloha for people and music on top of that, like, I feel like we, as a record label and a record store and a collective like of music lovers, like, we're doing our part, even though it's really small. Well, we're doing our part to continue to kind of perpetuate Hawaii, its spirit.
It's amazing, and I think what you've done, you've created such a strong brand, and it clearly just comes from a passion, and it's great to learn a lot more about your story. And just the kind of last thing I want to touch on then is, although you've kind of pulled away from DJing's now sending you all around the world, ironically. So how are you finding that?
Yeah, well, it's great. I love it. It's you know, side note, I get to go to record stores and send records back to our shop to sell, because you don't find stuff that you might find when you're in London or Tokyo. You know, like in Helsinki, you find Russian records. You hop over to Estonia and Finnish jazz. Like, I keep some of it for myself, sure, but you know, our customers love that stuff too. So, side note, we get to have like one of the coolest record stores in Hawaii. Also, you know, somewhat based on the selection offerings. Like, what? How did you get this record in here? You guys are in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Okay, but so traveling for DJing, like, how do I want to say this? Like, you know, this festival I played at recently, the Odysseus Festival, which We Jazz put on. If anyone ever gets a chance to go, it's really lovely. It's on a small little island. You take a ferry boat from Helsinki's like main area. It's like 5 or 10 minutes across the water, and there's a great mix of experimental music as well as jazz. But it's really mellow. And so they set up a record store in one of the houses, and that's where the DJs are. And I played the very first set on the Friday that it opened. Wasn't sure what to expect. And then spent the rest of the weekend checking out the music acts and whatnot, and watching some of the other DJs play, and realizing I had another set on Sunday, realizing that this is so mellow. I can play literally whatever I want. So I did. I played a 1 hour, just kind of like very laid back, a lot of ambient, kind of experimental type of stuff, all from Hawaii again, right? But it's this chance, like I mentioned earlier, it's this chance to kind of educate listeners in any part of the world and capture their attention and feed them back now to Hawaii, feed them back now to our store, feed them back to our label. It used to just be our label and our mixes and whatnot. Now we have a store, you know? So I think the point I'm really trying to make here is, like, we have the shop on the ground in Honolulu where locals and visitors can plug into what we're doing through that. Now I have the fortune of being able to travel a bit more to DJ gigs around the world. And that is really important work in reaching audiences who aren't able to travel to Hawaii, but we're getting on their map anyways. I feel like we've talked about this, you know, me, Oliver, and Max, we've talked about this a lot. They're like, yeah, go travel, do as many gigs as you can anywhere, because that only helps us more back home.
Yeah, it increases the connections, doesn't it? And I think face-to-face interaction is just so powerful. You know, it's maybe a bit overly obvious to say, but in a world where so much of our interaction is remote, just having that in-person meeting with people, the experiences, the photos, the conversations, there's a lot to it. It's very strong, that connection.
Yeah. And, you know, earlier you asked, like, what was the point at which AGS kind of blew up? And I said there hasn't really been any specific points. So me doing gigs in different parts of the world now is kind of contributing to this, like building the brand brick by brick. And even the My Analog Journal set, you know, connecting with Zag and connecting with them, they're based in London, right? Like, just making that connection alone and having the opportunity to play a set on their channel. Now, again, we're like reaching more we're reaching new listeners that we might never have been able to listen to or to reach if I hadn't been able to travel there, you know? So we really see like the importance of being out there, doing sets around, DJing around the world, reaching these audiences, making an impact, all for the sake of, you know, building up the music back home in Hawaii. And one of the things we want to do as a label, and we're trying to tie this into the shop as a venue as well, but we really want to start putting out more new music from Hawaii and just represent that part of the islands. As we get further and further away from kind of the golden era of the 70s and the 80s, right? Like I really want to support more new local music and just, you know, help listeners near and far, you know, become familiar with the talent that's coming up now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the next chapter, isn't it? And it's going to be really exciting to see what you unearth and what you get out to everyone. So there's just a couple more things I want to ask. I tend to end every episode with a couple of key questions.
Yeah.
And as I say, I think this has been an interesting one because we've talked a lot about things that aren't DJing because it's just so prevalent, but it's all about archiving and passion projects.
Yeah.
So where I'd usually ask people for a key piece of advice about DJing, I'd ask if there's any sort of one major piece of advice you'd give anyone that's looking to embark upon a kind of passion project that they would like to turn into their world.
And I think this is a lot of us understand this more than ever post-pandemic. But I feel like in our mostly Western capitalistic culture, right? When you start working on a passion project, there's this like pressure to not only do it really well, but be really successful really quickly and like hustle and make network and make connections and da-da-da. And that pressure is so strong that it's kind of like detrimental to your mental health. And so I have personally been working on trying to just embrace and understand that it's okay to go at the pace that you want to go at. And you don't need to hit, you don't need to scale at X, Y, Z scale. You know what I mean? If you want to just do it if it's a one person thing and you put out something every month or every 6 months, it's okay. Like, just do it how you want to do it. Do it at your pace. Do it at your scale.
That's great. And yeah, I think virality comes into that, doesn't it? If people go into the world of content making, they just want to have that one viral success. But if you look at the kind of backstory of anything like that, or kind of tech startups and things like that, it's very rare you see anything that's actually an overnight success. There's always a long story and a long road behind that.
Yeah. And the connections you make with people and the relationships you build, that's what you're going to take with you to your grave,
100%.
right? Not the likes or the followers or even the money or the success, right? It's like just do what you want to do and be happy.
And so the last question would be, thinking about the conversation that we've just had, is there anyone particular that you'd really like to hear have this type of interview? Ideally on this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I'm here in Helsinki, so I'm thinking about my friend Matti, who runs We Jazz, and he's a DJ. I think when he has the time to do it, but he's running quite a lot of festivals, as well as his label, which he's putting out, I think, a record at least every month. And these are mostly new jazz recordings, right? And he has a record store. I don't know how he does it, but I'd be curious to hear.
Great. Well, thanks a lot for your time today, Roger. Really enjoyed that.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Once a DJ. If you'd like to support the show, then head to onceadj.com/support to find out how you can help. If you'd like to get in touch with any feedback or suggestions, email onceadjpodcast@gmail.com. Once a DJ is produced by the good people at Remote Control. If you'd like to find out more about working with them, head to remote-ctrl.co.uk.